Week 6 is in the books, and the San Francisco 49ers march towards Miami. That's the big takeaway from Week 6. We're going to do a quick recap of some of the big stories because there actually were a fair amount that happened because there were some good games between some good teams. And then we're going to guess the lines and see what the look-aheads look like for Week 7. Let's rock. You said you were going to sing Nelly Just a Dream, I thought. That was from earlier in the day.
I was going to. It's late, man.
We'll see if maybe we can get there.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start here. Are the Pats, are they just going to walk to another Super Bowl?
I don't think they're going to. Well, no. I mean, they have to get through the AFC playoffs.
Right. That's my point. Are they just going to strut? Because the Kansas City Chiefs, a second straight week where they did not, it wasn't that they didn't look good. They looked bad. And this time it was more so the defense, right? Last week, the offense looked really terrible, got shut down by a Colts defense that was not good and probably isn't that good. Yeah. Now, I know Mahomes was hurt. They get Tyreek Hill back this week. They score 24 against a Houston defense at home, right? I don't think that it should be something to write home about. And then the defense just gets absolutely torched.
Yeah. I mean, well, okay, but and I agree. This is a horrible loss for Kansas City. Losing 2 consecutive games at home to AFC South opponents is not a good thing. However, you're looking at the inactive list for Kansas City today. Sammy Watkins, Anthony Hitchens, who's a starting linebacker for them, Eric Fisher, and Chris Jones. Right, so 4 of their starting caliber players are out. Left tackle is an important position. Eric Fisher is an important player for them. Sammy Watkins as well. We have seen Mahomes is a little bit banged up, and they probably win that game if they don't clown show the end of the first half, right? I mean, so there's a little bit of noise there. I agree they haven't looked good, but I'd rather if I'm a Chiefs fan, I'd rather them lose these 2 games here than 2 games later in the season because they did the same thing in week whatever it was, 15 and 16 last year. They lost at home to the Chargers. They lost on the road to Seattle team. Neither of those teams were particularly great, and they lost to them. Colts, Houston, I think are similarly yoked there. But we also saw today in a Houston team, a team that I think can compete for one of the spots in the AFC as well with New England. And New England hasn't exactly been good at every facet of football so far this year.
Okay. I do like your point about the Chiefs, and I agree. I think they're a little banged up. I think Mahomes is still a little banged up, and he hasn't, as great as the beginning of the season was for him, it was a little facetious, right? His numbers were way less indicative.
We got a lot of flack for that, right? I mean, as a company.
Mm-hmm. But there is something to that. I don't believe that he's hit his stride yet. Getting Hill back will certainly help. Getting Watkins healthy in the offensive line. But I think you summed it up perfectly by saying the Patriots won't roll because, hey, the Texans are pretty good. I got news for you. You know who Bill Belichick ain't losing sleep over? Bill O'Brien, Romeo Cannell, and the Houston Texans.
But hey, let's step back for a second, though. Bill O'Brien made a very cool and good decision today for Houston, did he not?
Great. Congratulations. That ain't going to get it done against the Patriots.
Okay.
Here's what I would say is that the Patriots we know, everyone is talking about how the Patriots don't look good yet. Well, of course not. They never do. That's the whole point. They gear up for the playoffs. They look better now than they normally do at this point. Remember what was happening last year at this point? People were losing their minds. So I really am worried, personally, that the AFC is even worse than we thought, and that the Patriots are just going to stroll to another another Super Bowl.
My thing is, I think we know less about the New England Patriots than we are made to believe sometimes. And them facing the Jets with Luke Falk, the Giants with sort of breaking in Daniel Jones and no other players. Buffalo gave them a game, right? And they looked terrible against Buffalo, and that's basically the only decent team that they've played. And granted, I agree with you. I think they should be number 1 in our power rankings with a bullet. I think that the teams in the AFC that are, I don't think there's a team in the AFC I'd rank higher than 6th or 7th. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to I'm gonna take a step back from saying, okay, this spells doom for the competitive nature of the AFC moving forward.
So you're not overreacting to it.
I'm not going to overreact.
Because I think that will be
There will be an
overreaction.
overreaction for sure.
And
Go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say I'm with you because there's so many pieces to the Patriots that I think right now rely on the defense, and you just never know. Like guys can get hurt, and so the offense does. It will take some time to get rolling, and there's always the chance that it doesn't. So, the Houston Texans are interesting because you mentioned the Bill O'Brien decision, right? A 4th and 3 at the 27, I believe.
Yep.
And kudos to him for making the right decision because if it goes wrong and Pat Mahomes marches down your throat and ties the game and you lose,
Doesn't look good.
it doesn't look good. But as we'll talk about tomorrow in our AWS Decision of the Week piece, that was the right decision to make but with a bullet, to borrow your phrase, because if we can use that twice, we have to. It was the right decision. He made it. And then you've got Deshaun Watson, who I would throw into the MVP race right now.
Yeah, right. And I don't even think he played his best game today. Right, he threw 2 interceptions. He was under 7 yards of pass attempt, both overall and when clean. But when the Chiefs blitzed him today, right, he was 10 of 12, 8.7 yards per pass attempt, a passer rating of 102.8. That was where he got his best graded throws. He was terrific there. And I think for me, when I look at this offense, they didn't do anything really down the field. He completed 2 passes over 10 yards downfield. He was 14 of 16, though, for 100 yards down the middle of the field, underneath 10 yards. And to me, like, that was where the Chiefs' defense was vulnerable. Anthony Hitchens is bad. His backup's even worse, right? So, he did a good job. The Texans' offense, I mean, Carlos Hyde, Dan Fouts compared him to Earl Campbell on the broadcast.
Yeah, not quite.
And he did have, 60 yards after contact on 26 carries, 116 yards overall, 4.5 a carry. It does look like teams that can at least stay close. If you can stay close to Kansas City, right? If you can stay within a score of them, there's a blueprint out there, and it's to basically run all over them. And Carlos Hyde has demonstrated you don't need a talented running back to do that. If I'm a Chiefs fan, I'm going to be a little bit nervous about that because you're just putting undue strain on your quarterback to boat race teams. And in the playoffs, that's just simply not going to be the reality. You're going to be in these close games, and your defense is going to continue to get exposed if that's the situation.
Well, Deshaun Watson had that deep throw to Will Fuller that Fuller lost. It appeared in the sun.
Yep.
That could have been very different. The one thing that would give me hope if I'm a Chiefs fan, aside from having the best quarterback in the NFL, is that catastrophic end of half situation was so terrible. I mean, so terrible. That happens. Will happen once this season, probably, right? And it's hard to overcome. But you expect the Chiefs to be the type of team that can overcome it, and they aren't hitting on all the cylinders that they need to make that happen right now. So we'll get out of it with this. In the AFC, who's the bigger competitor to the Patriots? Is it the Texans or the Chiefs?
I have to say it's Houston at this point because they have the tiebreaker with Kansas City and they have the same record. And right now, I think their defense is slightly better, and they have. I don't think their quarterback is nearly as good, but the supporting cast I think is every bit as good. The offensive line is
they both suck.
They both suck right
Cam
now.
Irving was terrible.
And the 3 wide receivers for they finally getting tight end use out of Fells, but then Hopkins is the best receiver in the game. Fuller's great. And when they get Kenny Stills back and Kiki Kuti, that's a good offense.
No, I'm with you right there. And here's the thing. Deshaun Watson is certainly not the passer that Pat Mahomes is. But his mobility and ability to create with his legs helps even that. Today it was evident, had a couple of runs for
He
touchdowns.
wasn't pressured as much as normal. 8 out of 47 dropbacks, which is, basically it's, 20-ish%.
Mm-hmm. That's half as much.
As much as he's normally used to. And a lot of that is the Chiefs, they're not getting anything out of Frank Clark up front.
I was just about to say. That's why you pay all the monies for Frank Clark.
And we saw that coming a mile away during the offseason. We were very upset about that. But kudos to Bill O'Brien, kudos to the Texans for going in there and getting a win in what is one of the hardest home field advantages to get a win in.
Yeah, but what I think was really cool about the Bill O'Brien thing was the Chiefs' offense had not looked great, yet he understood that the base rate for them should be what you respect. All right, to the NFC, where there was a really big game, and I'm wearing a red shirt for a reason. And despite the fact that our lock of the week was the Rams -3, I'm a little excited because the Niners just put the smackdown on the Rams. It was really ugly. And this game had there was a similar turn in this game to the Chiefs game, right? The Rams get the ball coming out of the half, and Jared Goff flips it to generational talent Darrell Henderson, who then punts it backwards, and the Niners pick it up. Now, I don't know if that would have totally changed things, but it definitely affected the morale of the Rams, and the Rams just proceeded to get stomped all over. So here's the question. Are the Niners the best team in the NFC?
I said this last week. I'll continue to say it. I think the New Orleans Saints are still the best team in the NFC. A lot of unknowns there with the quarterback play, but
with who? With the Saints?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know how Breeze is going to come back from his injury, when and how well.
Yeah.
Because if I look, and granted, San Francisco is awesome. I mean, you look at their defense; they absolutely, after the first drive of the game, gave the Rams everything. The pass rush, the roid rage celebrations from the defensive coordinator.
Bobby Saleh is my man.
Their secondary played fine. I mean, and granted, I don't know how much of this is assisted by the fact that Jared Goff simply couldn't do anything today. But the Niners, you don't have to apologize for the other team playing like crap against you. And their defensive front, I mean, you look at the investment they've made. Solomon Thomas came off the edge for a strip sack today. Eric Armstead, DeForest Buckner inside are terrific. And then you have D Ford and Nick Bosa as well. That's hard for an offensive line as weak as the Rams to go up against. And I think the thing that we didn't really realize was just
Jared Goff's not great.
Jared Goff can't play, and that to me that's a huge deal. But when I look at the 49ers moving forward, you take away the other team not playing well, and there's a huge question about whether Jimmy Garoppolo can match wits with another good quarterback. And today, he got a clean pocket on, basically, 24 of 35 dropbacks, less than 6.5 yards per pass attempt in those situations, 0 passes caught that traveled over 20 yards in the air. And, they had turnovers, right? They had a turnover in the red zone that was intercepted by Marcus Peters. They had a strip sack on a play when, the Rams were all but dead and let them come back into the game. So I'm always just a little concerned about Garoppolo and the fact that the Niners, aside from George Kittle, don't have these great receivers.
That's the thing. This felt more about the Rams than the Niners to me, which is interesting because the Monday night game felt like it was all about the Niners, right? And their coming out party, and their defense is so good. And we said last time, and I felt pretty good about this, which is the Niners have the type of team that can beat bad teams.
Oh, yeah, and beat them ruthlessly.
Now, maybe the Rams are a bad team. That might be the takeaway here instead of saying that the Niners are this great team, because Garoppolo made some very poor throws, right? The one that was actually intercepted in the end zone. He has the Brady-esque characteristic that you don't want, which is sometimes when they're under pressure, instead of throwing it away, they just sort of flutter it up there, and you're like, what are you doing, man? Now, in fairness to him, he didn't have to do a whole lot because Jared Goff was so bad.
It's the Bridgewater discussion where you're wondering, is it a error of omission or commission? I was about to say that, but I think he didn't make throws because he didn't have to.
Sure. And the other thing was their O-line was as bad as the Rams was. Laken Tomlinson, Mike Person were getting absolutely ravaged by Aaron Donald, who is a freak. And this goes to show you, Aaron Donald was still great in this game, and we didn't even talk about him much because the Rams' offense was so bad. The Jared Goff thing is so weird because I think the narrative tomorrow, we're going to hear a lot of, well, they didn't have Todd Gurley. Well, on the first possession of the game, they didn't throw the ball once. They ran the ball straight down the Niners' throats. And then somehow, some way, the passing game didn't burble up because of this.
Well, and they had other drives, too. They had the ball inside the 5-yard line on a drive that was mostly consisted of run plays, and they didn't get a fourth down. They had so honestly, you think about this, and, we were now 4-2 on the lock of the week, blah, blah, blah. This game could have probably gone in either direction. There were some random plays that put the Niners out ahead, there could have been other random plays that put the Rams out ahead, and then the same issues that beset Goff, came upon Garoppolo.
Right.
But it just didn't happen, right? And we got a little bit lucky with Seattle. We get unlucky here with the Rams. Sort of those things sort of even out. But I agree. And the thing with the Niners that's interesting and what makes this league, I think, unsatisfying right now to you and I is, to your point about good and bad teams, the Niners go to Washington next week. Probably a womp on them. Mm-hmm. They come home. They face the Panthers. The Panthers are a good, not great team. I think the 49ers will probably handle them. They go to the Cardinals, who are kind of a plucky team, but their defense is bad. And as much as Murray is coming into his own, I think they'll probably win that game. Then they have home to Seahawks. They could be 8-0 by the time they get this home game with Seattle. This might be a situation, we see it all the time, actually. We saw it with the 2017 Rams as well. Teams that pop up and face kind of bad schedules while the other teams in their division regress, it takes almost all the way until the playoffs before we find out if they're actually good. We saw the Rams got drilled at home by the Falcons in 2017. This could be the similar fate for the Niners here.
This was exactly what I was going to say about the Niners, is it feels like the Rams from a couple of years ago, and that's not a bad thing.
No, I mean it's a good step in the right direction.
Going to the Super Bowl, right?
In just one short year after, yeah.
So I think overall the narrative for the Niners is going to be, well, you shouldn't be as pumped as most of their fans are.
Yeah.
But given the state of the NFL right now, which I got to be honest with you, I think a lot of teams suck. I think a lot of quarterbacks are bad. Yeah. And if you have a defense that stays healthy and is as jacked up as they get, like, you got a shot.
Well, and speaking of, so I talk about the Saints. Lattimore, somebody who has been up and down, but I think we both would agree is super talented. Today, he only gave up 44 yards on 8 targets into his coverage, a pick and a pass defense. Eli Apple, just 20 yards into his coverage. They really did shut down Gardner Minshew, and like to the degree that matters, right? Bridgewater, not great again today, although he completed all the passes in the intermediate zone. He did just enough for that last drive. Again, if I get Breeze back, and I know that Breeze is going to be a sort of healthy version of who he is, I'm still taking the Saints over anybody else in the NFC. And granted, kudos to them. I mean, think about
we need a kudos counter. You're handing them out.
I know,
right.
but good on them for Breeze gets hurt. Everybody says the season's over, and they're 4-0. And as much as I want to give some credit to Teddy, it's mostly been that defense and the supporting cast around him that has been terrific.
Defense has been great. So you are looking very good. Last week we tried to rank, the NFC, and you went with the Saints at the top. The team that I took at the top came out and promptly pooped themselves.
Philadelphia.
Themselves. That's fantastic. The Eagles pooped themselves in Minnesota, the site of where they won the Super Bowl, interestingly, with a different quarterback. It was really a weird game because we knew the Eagles' pass rush was good, and we knew the Eagles couldn't cover. And it turns out that when you have Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, if you can't cover, it doesn't matter how good your pass rush is.
I wonder if Joe was watching the game.
Do you think?
It would be interesting to, be exactly what you said. You look at the Vikings' offensive line, like, if this isn't a bigger victory for coverage mattering more than pass rush, I don't know what it is. The Vikings left tackle Riley Reif exited the game after 19 or so snaps. He was replaced by Rashad Hill, who's a career backup. And the Vikings are already starting a backup at right guard. This was a situation for the Eagles to eat defensively, and instead what they got was Kirk Cousins, 4 out of 8 passes over 20 yards are complete. 3 of them were touchdowns, right? He had another touchdown in the intermediate range. Like, Kirk Cousins was brilliant today. I mean, 13 yards per pass attempt from a clean pocket.
230 yards off play action, 18 yards per attempt, 158 pass rating off
It's
play
exactly
action.
the game the Vikings wanted to play.
Yep.
When the Vikings set up, when the Vikings say, what is our perfect game? Their perfect game is playing really good defense, creating turnovers, getting sacks. Dalvin Cook today, got a positive grade got a good grade from us. He had just 41 yards on the ground, right? But they gave 63 of those yards to Alexander Madison, and who cares? They ran play action. To your point, they weren't even efficient running the football necessarily. 3.5 yards a carry, but play action worked.
They've established the run game to the point of exhaustion. I mean, You look at this Eagles team. Fletcher Cox was their highest graded player. He continued to wreak havoc on the interior, and it just didn't matter. I mean, they would play action with these bootlegs, and it just, Stephon Diggs had 4 seconds to get downfield. It's over. He roasted Rasul Douglas and Sidney Jones. I mean, both those guys got absolutely torched, and so this is the question for the Eagles. In that Super Bowl season, the whole Foles thing gets a lot of publicity, but really what it was their coverage came together and had a great season, right? And they had Patrick Robinson in the slot, and then that gave the opportunity for them to get to the point where Foles could actually make these.
They had a healthy Ronald Darby. They had, but today they were without Darby. They were without Avonte Maddox.
Yeah.
Right, but like he's just another body. Jalen Mills is also somebody who's played for them in the past, who doesn't play for them anymore, that played for that Super Bowl.
Yep.
Here's a question, and we've always sort of heard this name come up with Kansas City. Patrick Peterson, Jalen Ramsey, like those should be, if the Eagles want to compete, and we got made fun of, I got made fun of for saying that the Eagles would clinch early when Dallas was 3-0. Now Dallas is 3-3. Yep. This is still the Eagles division.
Yep.
And
they play on Sunday night.
And they play on Sunday Night Football. And so if you are the Eagles, I think you have to assert yourself as a front runner for Jalen Ramsey, because it does indeed turn your defense around. I mean, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham are terrific. It's just that they can't continue to get just drilled in the passing game here. Sidney Jones and Rasul Douglas are probably good second and third corners, maybe third and fourth corners, but if you're relying on them to be your two starters, especially against teams with Diggs and Thielen, you're screwed.
We'll talk about this in a second with the game. But who are you more concerned about? Which loss was more damning? The Eagles on the road to Minnesota or the Cowboys on the road to
the Cowboys
Jets?
By a country mile. I mean, the Vikings are a contending team in the NFC. As much as we like to give Kirk Cousins crap, they're a good football team. They're well coached. It's unclear to me whether the Jets are an NFL team until today, where we saw Darnold was terrific. He was the quarterback that we graded as the top quarterback over the last month of last year. They averaged over 7 yards per play against Dallas defense. All of the things that were said about Dallas have come true, and how they got there is a little weird. But at 3-3, like they had a pretty simple start of the season. They have the hardest schedule in the league moving forward, so it's a damning loss for Dallas to me.
I agree, and here's how I'd look at it. To me, everyone on the Dallas Cowboys is on the hot seat. The Eagles, it's like, okay,
just won a Super Bowl.
We know we're so confident in our talent and our process that there's no. Remember last year they were like down and out 100 times over, and they still managed to squeak in the playoffs and win a game. So they have this confidence. It's like the opposite. I think the Eagles and the Cowboys are like opposites. So the Cowboys, the littlest thing goes wrong, and hell is freezing over.
They're front runners.
Anything goes wrong, if they are in good shape, then it's like, okay, everything's perfect. Littlest thing goes wrong, disaster. For the Eagles, it's the little dog sitting in the room that's on fire. They just don't care.
And it is only just it's small stuff for Dallas. So the first week against New Orleans, it was like New Orleans found out their signals, right? And just that little small it's not that easy to deduce these signals, but the New Orleans found out, shut them down, right? Against Green Bay, it was a couple turnovers early, and the whole thing shot. Against the Jets, it was very much a couple big plays by New York early, and then losing Amari Cooper to injury, and the whole offense is shot, right? Dak was pressured more than he wasn't, right?
Which is bad.
And he, when clean, he was fine. But when you're pressured as much and you're kind of an average-ish quarterback, that's when it sort of starts to add up. So again, Dallas is at home this weekend against Philadelphia, right? This is a huge game. We'll talk about the leverage of this once we do the simulations and all that, but
it's a massive game.
It's a far better Sunday Night Football game than this last week's was.
We're going to guess that line in a second, but I have one last question for you. And this is going to sound like an overreaction. But is this the worst NFL season that we've had in recent memory? And I'm going to preface it with I think all the quarterbacks suck.
Yeah. Well, it's very similar to 2017 in that way, but in 2017 we got some fun stuff that happened, right? We had the Jacksonville Jaguars were good out of nowhere. The Minnesota Vikings were good out of nowhere. We had Alex Smith winning a passing title, right? And we're not getting that this year, right? We're getting teams like even look at the Ravens, and I tweeted out the fact Lamar Jackson at 122 yards before contact today. They are running an offense that is super fun. But even them, they couldn't even cover against the Bengals. That game didn't even go over the total. A couple of things that we had on Green Line. I like the Ravens, and I think that moving forward they'll be fine. But they're not like a compelling team by any stretch of the imagination. We talk about Houston, we talk about Kansas City, even New England, like the best team in the NFL right now.
They're not fun to watch.
They're not fun to watch. They have a huge asterisk next to them because their schedule literally doesn't give them any good teams to play. That's a good point. The thing is, though, I come back over here and I look at the games and I look at, okay, what games were compelling today? Saints Jaguars was ugly, but it was compelling. There was certainly a thing that could have happened. Like if the Jags would have won and the Texans would have gone to Kansas City and lost, the Jags would have been like a half game out of first in the AFC South. So there was something compelling going on there. Obviously Philly versus Minnesota was compelling, 49ers Rams. So there are always half the games suck, right? And for example, Washington versus Miami, you're learning nothing about this long term, right? But a lot of the games still have compelling things to them, even if the league isn't as quality as it normally is.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous, to be honest with you, because usually the things get worse as the season goes on from an offensive standpoint. And here's the way I'll sum it up. If I had to pick one quarterback to watch drop back and pass on every play, it would be Russell Wilson, because he's playing very, very well. He's the MVP of the league so far. And he is dropping back to pass less often than just about everyone south of Kirk Cousins.
Although today their run pass splits were terrific, and it was because they were behind early.
Because they were down.
And luckily for us, that was one of our two picks that we had today. We did get Seattle -1.5, -2. We got lucky there. We got I wouldn't say unlucky, but we just picked the wrong side in the second game.
Yeah,
so
there's always that's football, folks. But I'm nervous. I'm being a little pessimistic here, but I am a bit nervous.
Are we going to guess the lines now?
Let's do it.
Okay, before we start this, it's important. We don't want to always talk about this on Thursday, right? Because we did kind of gloat a little bit about, and I think that your quote was, "Give me every single one of the Detroit tickets," when they were +6 the other day. But there is some value in listening to what we have to say on this podcast and then turning around and getting on Thursday night, because these lines change a lot. If you look, obviously the game tonight between Detroit and Green Bay is one example where the line is very bettable at 6. At 3.5, it's very much less so. There was another one. If you were on Houston, right, 7.5 was probably a bettable line, and by the time it closes 3.5 in Kansas City, it's less so, right? You're almost back in Kansas City for the middle there. So things change so much here, and again, that's why this whole thing is so fluid in terms of okay, what are you taking? Well, it depends upon the day,
right?
And so and
that's what makes this fun.
It makes it fun. It makes it, but again, and we're trying to maybe educate listeners and bring people along for the ride. It's just important to know that context and to know if we like a game today, we might get additional data midweek, which means we don't like the game, or vice versa.
Are we going to educate the listeners on proper footwear as well, or
what do you mean?
Rocking this?
Well,
it might be best for you to do so.
Are you making fun of my appearance? Well, the thing is it's cold in most of the office, so I wear socks. It's still short season, right? Because
it's always short.
It's always short season. But it was also hey, I don't want to wear shoes today season. So you sort of split the difference. There's a reason for everything I do, George.
I'm not saying there isn't. Yeah. I just couldn't bring myself not to mention it.
And we've already had, I write down these things, our guests, and during Sunday Night Football, I write down what the line actually is. And we've actually seen movements in some of these already. So buckle up.
I'm excited. We're going to do this in order of most interesting to least interesting.
Okay.
So that we can keep people here. So if you are just fast forwarding our Week 6 analysis and starting here, the good stuff is coming up. We're going to start with the best game of the weekend, which happens to be on Sunday Night Football, thank God. And that is Philadelphia going to Dallas. This game is, I think, more compelling now that both teams lost, because this is a must-win for both teams.
I agree.
And I have the Dallas Cowboys favored by 3 in Dallas.
I did too. And I think the results of today's game had an effect on this. Well, It's -2.5, but it's juiced towards Dallas.
Really? That must have just changed. I saw 3.
Yeah, it's on Bet Online, it's -2.5, -117, which is essentially -3 flat. So
Sure.
we're right on there. I agree with the line movement down to -2.5 from 3 because I think Dallas's loss, as we just talked about, is less impressive than Philly's loss because Philly showed some spunk at the end there against a decent team, and Dallas showed some spunk against what we would consider not a great team. So interesting. What side do you like here?
At 2.5, well, I like the Eagles. Oh shit! That was a large bug.
Oh wow!
On my arm.
I said shit on the last episode.
That's gonna be really funny because I tried to stop cursing in the midst, and I think that made my voice go higher. So that'll be funny for people to laugh at if there's anyone listening.
I'm with you on the Eagles as well. One thing to discuss in this game is that Dallas does not necessarily always have a full home field advantage, and that was important tonight in the game with Pittsburgh against the Chargers. Dallas is not a team that historically has had a great home field advantage. So if you handicap these two teams equally, you should like Philly at +3.
There's a couple things that worry me. So, this is funny. Remember how we talked about the Cowboys running all this play action the first 3 weeks? Almost 40%?
Yeah.
They ran play action 7% of the time in this game. They had 3 attempts off play action.
Well, you know why? Because they were behind. It doesn't work when you're behind.
It doesn't work when you're behind. I mean, it's absolutely hilarious. We crowned Kellen Moore as being this young child who listens to the math, and the dude is just, is drowning right before our eyes. But the Cowboys, the Cowboys feel like they don't really have an identity. I hate to use this term, but the Eagles at least they feel as though they do, right? They're an aggressive team.
Yeah.
Carson Wentz is going to make some plays. They're going to cycle in their running backs. They're going to throw to their tight ends a bunch and see if you can actually stop them. If they had DeSean Jackson, they would have this kind of really multifaceted
and it probably attack. Would be. And we did see today in Dallas a couple things that happened. Jones was injured, right? They had to go with Jordan Lewis and Chidobe Awuzie at times. If they're injured and then Philly gets DeSean Jackson back, this is maybe a different handicap. I agree with you. But the interesting thing with Philly is we have to be careful though too. Is that they ran a fake field goal instead of just running a regular play. That was really they bad. Do some weird stuff too. They're not perfect. They are a gold standard in the NFL in terms of being smart, but they don't make perfect decisions.
Yeah, I think Doug would like to have that one back. And here's the thing:
they were behind by 7.
The Cowboys at home, if they can get those tackles back, Amari Cooper absolutely shredded this secondary. I mean, it was a disaster last year. And that's not something you can just cover up, right? The Eagles can't just come in and be like, hey, guys, play better against Amari Cooper. Yeah. They're going to be on the floor dying if they can't, figure out some ways to actually play coverage here. Here's my question. If Philly wins this game, does that mean it's it for Jason Garrett?
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't say mid-season.
Not mid-season, but just
they did fire Wade Phillips for Garrett in 2010.
So that would mean they'd lose 4 straight.
Yeah. After that's the hard part is then you anchor at 3-0 and now you're 3-4. And last season, so if I'm thinking about this from Jerry Jones's, and I've never done, I've never been under the influence the way that he has before, but if I'm thinking about it from his perspective, what did they do last year at 3-4, 3-5?
Right.
They make a huge move. They traded for Amari Cooper, and that spurned so what do they have to do at 3-4 this time? They got to make a huge move. They go with Garrett. The hard part is on that staff. Is Chris Richard the head coach then? Is it?
Oh, it's Kellen Moore.
See, that's what I don't know. Whereas back when he fired Wade Phillips in 2010, Garrett was the odds-on favorite to be the coach, and he ended up being one.
All right, yeah, I do. Do you think this moves?
I think it moves towards Philadelphia because I think the injury. I think coming out of the game, Philly's going to be healthier, getting healthier than Dallas, who might be getting less healthy. Yeah. And the idea that Dallas, banged up on the offensive line, banged up in the secondary.
Well, they lost as 7-point favorites. So.
Well, and last year, so a good anchor here, and we've done this a few times, especially with the interdivision games. In the I believe this was the last game that Wentz started last year.
Yes.
Dallas was a 6-point favorite at home. that game basically went into overtime, and Rasul Douglas juggled the ball, and Mari Cooper scored.
That was brutal.
Right, and so even and that was when like Dallas Goedert had like an 80-yard touchdown called back. I don't think that much has changed over this time. It's certainly Dallas. I don't think should be like. It's weird. I don't think Philadelphia's gotten 3 points better during that time, but I don't think Dallas should have been that favorite at the time. So it's sort of weird to go back and think about that.
All right, that may be a bet I placed this morning. Just saying. All
Okay.
right. Baltimore at Seattle. This is an interesting game. Interconference game, but two teams that are they're like on the fringe, right?
Yeah.
They both have some flaws, but they both have quarterbacks that can make plays.
Yep.
And both of their defenses are notoriously good, but have been actually very bad. And so it's in Seattle. I had Seattle favored by 3.
And I said 2.5. So I basically said I think Baltimore's a little bit better. The market right now is at 3.5 and juiced towards Seattle, so almost out to 4. Okay. You made a perfect point. Both of these teams historically and from a reputation's sake have good defenses. Neither team actually has a good defense. In fact, we saw Baltimore's on display when we were rooting for Cincinnati to backdoor cover at the end of that game. And Seattle, like, luck boxed their way into 3 interceptions and a fumble by Nick Chubb and all that kind of stuff to actually come out victorious on the road. Now, good team don't have to apologize for those things. It's better to do what Seattle and Baltimore have done, which is to win. Is to win with not the greatest fundamentals in the world. But I don't think, if I'm looking at the total here, 51.5. That seems blasphemous in the past.
Real high.
But I kind of like. I mean, I do like the idea that this is going to be a higher scoring game. What do you think? This is basically with Seattle's home field advantage, just saying these two teams are equal.
Yeah.
I don't really like either side.
I'm actually kind of ambivalent here. I'm excited to watch this game. So I think of it in a couple of ways. The first is from the quarterback position. Russell Wilson is the better quarterback here. But from the coaching side, like John Harbaugh plays the underdog role as well as any coach out there. He's going to make decisions that we've seen literally a week ago that Pete Carroll is not willing to make, right? Mm-hmm. He is not going to take those chances, even as a short favorite. So, I don't really care.
One thing personnel-wise, Seattle plays a lot of base defense. Baltimore plays a lot of, heavy personnel. It might actually play into the fact that Seattle's trying to party like it's 1999 defensively. That, it worked against them when LA was running all those receivers around the field. But it might be interesting, in terms of Seattle's better against the run than they are against the pass, and Baltimore wants to run the football. So maybe Seattle's defensive deficiencies will be masked a little bit, but not enough for me to lay over a field goal here.
Yeah, I think if it gets over 4, then I'm the Lamar Jackson show.
And the ability, and this sounds stupid, but the ability for Justin Tucker to make a kick from literally anywhere on the field and his inability to miss extra points is going to make me back Baltimore incrementally more than Seattle, because we saw today with Seattle's team, like when extra points aren't a gimme, it's tough to bet on those teams.
Yeah, it's true. All right, next up, Minnesota and the revived Kirk Cousins travel to Detroit, who plays tonight.
Yep.
On Monday Night Football. I have Detroit favored by 3 in this one, too.
I said Detroit 2.5, and it looks like people are giving Minnesota a fair amount of love here because right now it's currently a pick'em.
Wow.
And if that's the case, we'll have to see what happens tonight, but give me Detroit.
Yes, I will take Detroit all day long once again. And we're setting ourselves up for so much failure tonight when it's just a Lambeau, meltdown for
no Devontae
Stafford.
Adams. Actually, that number is almost all the way down to a flat 3.
It's nuts.
So interesting.
Is Detroit a good enough team for Kirk Cousins to play poorly against? Is the real question.
I just think it has to be whether that team was good or not. Because although Kirk, strangely, one of our first ever spread picks we made together was in 2017 week 2, Kirk on the road against a Rams team that ended up being good, and they won. So maybe it is more reputation than actual fundamentals. But I think Detroit does so many things that Philly doesn't do defensively, which is cover. And the Vikings don't exactly have a ton of weapons. They have 2, right? So Detroit's very strong up front, so they can basically stop the run and convince Minnesota that stuff like play action and all that kind of stuff doesn't work. And then Slay and the folks on the back end, Coleman, can give them enough to really work with. Detroit on the other side of the ball, actually, I think that they match Minnesota's wits at wide receiver, and Stafford's a better quarterback than Cousins. So to me, I'm going to go with the home team here.
Yeah, big game in the division. Obviously,
if Detroit wins these next 2 games, they are the
yes.
They have the bullet on their back, or the target on their back for this division.
Next up, this is another interesting game. Would have been more had someone not retired. The Houston Texans on fire go into Indy off a bye. So we do these before the games start.
Yep.
So I didn't know the Texans were going to beat the Chiefs. So I had Indy as a 2.5-point favorite, and I'm guessing that is massively incorrect.
Not massive, actually. I had it more at 1. I had it more at 1.5, and that's where it is.
And so you said that just based on.
I said that based on the fact that Indianapolis is not as good as Houston. I think you add up the players. But Indianapolis is coming off of a bye week. Houston is traveling. This will be their second consecutive road game, all that kind of stuff. So I said Houston's better, but there's enough stuff to kind of make Indy a small favorite.
Indy's coming off a bye and just shut down the Chiefs. Now I expect the Chiefs to be a little bit better against the Texans.
But Jacoby Brissett is not a good quarterback right now. I mean, he's good enough to win with, but he's not. He's half the quarterback that Watson is, right? So I sort of made them. Yeah. Anyway, so it's 1.5, and this is a rematch of playoffs, right? Indianapolis absolutely destroyed Houston, both in the playoffs and then their subsequent game in Houston. I think the Chiefs offer a fundamental singular point in terms of not being able to stop other teams. So if Indy tries to pull some of the nonsense they pulled in Kansas City last Sunday night against Houston, it'll probably not work. And if you go against Shawn Watson and he's on and you surrender a possession or 2, as Kansas City found out today, you're screwed, right? Yeah. So I might, if I'm getting anything with Houston, whether on the money line or points, I might just take Houston in this one.
I'm not nearly as sold. The Bill O'Brien inflection point here. I'm really a believer in Frank Reich. So
I am too. And the other thing that's going to influence this is how healthy is T.Y. Hilton.
Sure.
How healthy is...
You would think he would be healthy now at the week of rest.
Yeah, but then how healthy is the secondary, right? How healthy are the line? Is Darius Leonard going to play?
Sure.
The thing that's not trivial is that, we can say all we want about Bill O'Brien, the fact that he's a GM now, his play calling, his decision making and all that, but he's getting effective play out of Carlos Hyde, out of Darren Fells,
Earl Campbell,
out of Kenny Stills, out of Kiki Kuti. He's getting Will Fuller might get 1,000 yards this year, and DeAndre Hopkins was the best non-quarterback in football a season ago, and he's not right now, right? Sure. And they're still playing efficiently. So I'm not saying I'm sold on Bill O'Brien. What I'm saying is it looks like he's getting a fair amount of run out of this team. Offensive line isn't good either.
No, I'm with you. Yeah, just the Atlanta game was super fluky because Atlanta's absolute garbage, and this Chiefs game was also weirdly fluky with the fumble at the end of the half and the fact that the Chiefs, quite literally, if I played running back, I would look like Earl Campbell as well.
That's true.
Yeah. Anyways, New Orleans goes to Chicago coming off a bye. So this will be Teddy versus Chase Daniel.
Or Mitch.
Oh, is he potentially back?
Yeah.
Oh.
Can you imagine? This is going to put you in a position to root for Teddy Bridgewater.
Oh.
This is gonna put
Mitch
you in
is back,
this is
baby.
gonna put you in a position to like Teddy.
Let's go. I have the Bears favored by 1.5 points.
And I had them favored by 3.5.
Wow.
Again, bye week, the Teddy hand. Like, I talk a big game on Teddy, but like whenever I have to put my money where my mouth is,
I mean, the Saints
always
have just been like unstoppable, and Trubisky sucks. Trubisky is garbage, and now the whole world has seen it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's look
What
at
is
where. 3.5 minus 115. So it's shaded towards the Bears.
Well, let me let me open up my pocketbook here.
Yeah, I would agree that I think if this is where the number is, then you have to back Bridgewater and New Orleans, don't you? I mean, the thing with Chicago is they're getting healthy. Although Hakeem Hicks is going to be out for a while, their defense has not regressed the way that we said they would. Although they played poorly against the Raiders. I don't know, man. How much? Okay, put a percentage to it. How much better is Chicago's defense than New Orleans' defense?
Yeah, that's the thing. Who knows?
I would say maybe 15%, even, and that's like a high estimate.
Yeah, they're both good defenses.
Yeah,
defenses are either good, have one weakness, or are bad.
Yeah,
right. And both these defenses are in the good category.
Yeah.
Now Chicago's probably a little bit better, but like that's also is a function of who they played, and Derek Carr played.
So you're getting the better quarterback getting points.
Yes.
In this situation,
better quarterback and better coach, getting points. Yes, that's how I feel about it.
Okay.
Thursday Night Football. Your Chiefs go into Denver, Colorado to face the now steaming hot Denver Broncos.
We inspired them,
who beat just an egregiously
the Titans.
awful
The
Titans team.
I mean,
Marcus,
remember when we said the Titans were the biggest movers after week 1,
Yep.
and we said Mariota has to play better though for this to materialize, and Titans fans were so mad.
So mad.
This
All
is
7
his year.
of them.
Yeah, right.
And it turns out that when your quarterback has the lowest completion percentage from a clean pocket, in other words, unencumbered
Yeah.
in the pocket, that's not good for you. That's going to be bad.
Yeah.
I have the real quick. Does Mariota play quarterback again
For the Titans or
Titans.
anybody?
for the Titans?
Yeah, Tannehill's not finishing. I mean, Tannehill will start some games, and then he'll get hurt, and then they're going to throw.
Oh, are they putting is Tannehill playing next week or when they?
I think
they have a bye. No, they play the Chargers.
Can you imagine that game? Okay, so realistically, I think no. I think Tannehill plays, and I think he plays well because the Chargers are the Chargers.
Okay.
And then he'll play for about a month, and then he'll get hurt, and then Mariota's going to trot back out there.
Yeah. Do you think someone signs Mariota next year to start?
Not to be a starter?
Okay.
I think he's a good backup.
Yeah, I agree.
Guy that can move on his feet and
former
sucks.
number 2 pick.
Yeah.
That's going to be a backup. I have the. This was before Denver played the SmackDown. I don't think that really matters. I have Denver favored by 6.5. Getting 6.5.
And that's what I had. And you will be interested to know that the betting market
does not agree.
3.5.
Whoa.
So you and I.
Ow.
There was an overreaction.
Oh. Well. 3.5. Joe Flacco. I mean, so I can see where they're coming at, because you just watched a defensive performance that is just so bad. I mean, it was so.
And the other team shut somebody out.
So yes, so bad. And what does Denver do? They run the ball. That's just quite literally.
Yeah.
That is what they do, and they do it very, very well. So I can kind of see where the market is coming from here.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is it's just like the Broncos are not particularly injured. They have pretty good personnel.
Yeah. Sanders left the game.
Okay, so I take that back. So but the Chiefs are more injured where it counts. Like if you tell me, okay, Sammy Watkins is going to play a Thursday Night Football game again in his career, I'm going to say I'll take the under 0.5 Thursday Night Football games for Sammy Watkins the rest of his career. So like Kansas City's, none of these guys are walking through the door today, right? Whereas Denver's healthy, and to your point, their strengths offensively
match up nicely.
So if this got down to, because Kansas City right now, it's shaded towards Denver. If this thing gets to 3 by whatever, I'm going to lay the 3 and take Andy Reid. Right, Andy Reid on a short week is going to run laps around Vic Fangio. I'm sorry,
this will be a very interesting game. Very interesting.
Total
game.
on this game 50. A game after Denver's total against Tennessee was in the low 40s, and the game didn't even get close.
I personally really like the spot for Kansas City. It is a short week. They have lost 2 in a row at home. Denver is fraudulently high, right?
Yeah.
So they just
it's the
so
same
they
thing
beat a Chargers team on the road. The Chargers suck.
Yeah, they're not
right?
good.
The Chargers just lost to a guy that is a duck hunter. Did you hear that interview? I mean, I'm stoked for him, but man, that was hilarious, right? So the Chargers are trash. Denver beat the Chargers with a home crowd.
Yeah.
And then they beat the Titans, who have a guy that isn't going to be playing quarterback next year as their starting quarterback.
Yeah.
So I am all for the Chiefs here. I will be making
another wager. Okay.
An investment. Next up, Monday Night Football. Did I do the test tour? Did he?
What is Monday Night
emphasize it
Football
enough?
next week?
It is the New England Patriots at the New York Jets. This is now a compelling game because Sam Darnold played well.
Oh, is it?
And Greg Williams blitzed the living crap out of Dak Prescott and didn't see it coming. Will Tom Brady see it coming?
I had the Jets as 10-point dogs going into 13.5-point dogs going into the game.
I had them as 16.5-point dogs.
And you can imagine after it's 10, and to bet the Jets, you got to lay 125, which total on this game 43. So you're seeing a very similar situation to what you saw on Thursday, which is a high spread, not as high as you saw on Thursday, high spread, low total in a New England game. I mean, the New York Jets do enough things offensively that are compelling. You have Jamison Crowder underneath, who was very good, and you have Robbie Anderson over the top. You have Le'Veon Bell. You have an offensive line that's not DS.
Oh.
So when I look at 43,
selling me the Jets
when I look at 43, I like the over.
Oh, okay.
You know, because
I can get with you on the over
because I don't think the Jets defense is good. So they have one. Jamal Adams is terrific today, but the rest of that defense is not great. And so when I look at this game, I sort of more like the total.
I can get behind that. The Cowboys, in my opinion, are bad. And I thought this was going to be a rough game for the Cowboys. I didn't think they would lose it.
Yeah.
But I tried to convince our super contest partner, to roll with the Jets. Did not happen, but whatever. The Cowboys suck. So if I had to bet this one, I would take the Pats.
Yeah, no, I think that this line is. I mean, no game is going to change the line. To your point, 6.5 points. To my point, 3.5 points.
At 10, they are begging you to tease this with something, right?
Tease the Pats down. Yeah, that would
right. 10 through 7 through 6 as well. So, yeah. If I had to take one side, I think I am fading the Jets beating up on an injured Cowboys team.
Okay.
Next up, the Oakland Raiders, fresh off of the post-London bye, are visiting the Green Bay Packers. I have the Packers favored by 7.5 in Lambeau.
I am with you. And interestingly, now the game has not been played yet. Right. The market likes Packers at 6.5.
Wow. Okay.
So we're a little bit underrating the Oakland Raiders. If it is 6.5, I know Rodgers is pretty maddening, but that defense is too good. Derek Carr is not good enough.
Yeah.
And Aaron Rodgers is. I would like the Packers minus the 6.5 here at Lambeau Field.
I am with you there.
Even after and part of this is probably the fact that Oakland, again, we're getting this again. Oakland, 2 weeks off. Green Bay, a short week, right? That rest differential is playing into this, I think.
Yeah, it has to be. The future Super Bowl champions, San Francisco 49ers, go to Washington to play the Redskins. I obviously said this before the beatdown occurred. So I had the Niners favored by 6.5, and I'm sure it is more than that now.
I said 6.5 as well. It is now 9.5, but it's been down. It's down from 10. It started at 10 when I looked earlier today.
I mean, this has to get a little lower, right?
I would say. I mean, Washington almost lost to Miami.
True.
But there are some redeemable things about Washington, namely their quarterback is actually an NFL player. Terry McLaurin is a pretty solid.
Is an NFL player.
Is an NFL player. Their defense.
And that's where it stops.
Yeah, that's true. That is where it stops.
That
so
is
if you
about
look
where
at
it
if you look at San Francisco, this is another game where, and again, we saw this a lot with the Rams in 2017. There's so many parallels, but
It's ridiculous.
the one parallel is that when the Rams played a bad team, they not only won, but they beat the hell out of that team.
Stomped them.
Like I always have this in my mind when they had like a 3rd and 37 against the Giants on the road, and they ran like the tunnel screen to Robert Woods, and he
fixed it
yeah,
out.
yeah, and he scored on it. And it's like, I think San Francisco might be that team this year where like they just boat race every bad team, and the models might not ever predict that, but it might be something to get out ahead of.
Yeah, they're playing with a chip on their shoulder on every single play. The aforementioned Los Angeles Rams are going to Atlanta.
Stop.
So
just stop. Right
you
there.
made the comparison between these two teams today, and it made me want to cry, to be perfectly honest, because I think you're kind of right, and it's really sad.
Yeah.
Both teams loaded with offensive talent. Both teams made it to the Super Bowl against the New England Patriots. Both had chances of winning the game, and both pooped it down their leg. Peed it down their leg, whatever it is. So, first question before guessing the line. Will Dan Quinn be the coach of this team when this game happens?
Well, I'll say this. He'll either coach this game, or if he coaches this game, he's coaching the rest of the games this year. I think if you're not going to fire him after what just happened today, you're never going to fire him until the season's over.
Yep.
So if that's the case, if you're the Falcons and you think Quinn gets fired at some point in time, he's getting fired tomorrow.
Do you think he will be?
No.
Okay. I actually think so because of the Matt Bryant thing. I think, weirdly, Matt Bryant actually kind of...
Well, them bungling the kicker situation to a point where they got literally no usable kicker in the preseason, and they had to bring back, this old guy, not as old as some people say he is, but old, and shanks an extra point. Yeah. And he's like one of the good ones. He's a reliable kicker, unfortunately.
I have the Atlanta Falcons getting 2.5 points.
I said 4.5, and it looks like it is 3.5. But to lay to pick up the 3.5 points, you have to lay -125. So it's kind of a 3 here, which is kind of right smack dab in the middle of where we have it.
I want nothing to do with this game.
Okay, well, I kind of like the Rams. I kind of like the Rams indoors against air offensively. That's like the perfect antidote to bad offense.
Yeah, it's actually a great point. This is the perfect game for the Rams.
Yeah.
What am I saying? Sorry.
It's a little late, but
I'm scarred.
I understand that.
I'm very scarred here. This is a great spot for the Rams, right?
Yeah, because there's absolutely nothing the Atlanta Falcons can do to make your offense look bad. Nothing. They're impotent.
The Atlanta Falcons are currently they are on fire. The Rams are right now battling to stave it off.
The Rams defense has been an issue this year, but not a big enough one for the Falcons to just drag them up and down the field.
Yeah.
Whereas so Ryan today, for example, had 4 touchdowns, over 400 yards, and a loss, right? Like Matt Ryan's not the problem, okay? Nope. He wasn't the problem against Houston. He's never been the problem, and they still can't beat teams like Arizona, right? The Rams are actually a good team with a good coach and a decent set of personnel on defense. They should boat race Atlanta in this one. And again, like we're overreacting, obviously, because the Falcons have been consistently underperforming, but this is, to me, the Rams are equally underperforming at this point and should be the ones to emerge from it.
Yeah, I can get with you behind the Rams there. The Cardinals, who just won, they've won 2 straight, and Kyler was good.
Very good.
Are going to play the New York Football Giants and Daniel Jones. Rookie of the Year battle right here.
Yeah, stop.
I have the Giants favored by 3.5.
And I said 2.5, and it appears to be where I'm looking 3. Yeah, 3, but a lot if you want to back Arizona. So +3, Arizona's -125. So if you want the better quarterback getting the points, you're going to have to pay for it here on the road.
I figured there would be a little bit of, the Giants just played the Patriots. That doesn't matter at all, and the Cardinals stink. But the Cardinals won. So
I think
that makes it a
everybody who
little
watched
harder.
the Giants game knows that those 2 touchdowns were about as fluky as
Sure.
Golden Tate scored. It was a good play, but that's not repeatable. And then the fumble return. The thing that's low key about this is that both defenses are beige, and so this over under is 49.
The color or
Garbage.
Okay.
Yeah, and so if I'm looking at this total being 49. I don't know why this total is 49 and other games are in the 50s right now in the NFL, because the only thing keeping
Would be the weather.
Also, and the Giants' injuries, right? So, if they get
Right.
Ingram and Shepard and Barkley back, I think that there'll be points to be put up here because both the Cardinals and the Giants' defenses are horrible.
I'm excited for this game, actually, because it seems as though Kyler Murray might start.
It seems like
to
Kyler
get it
Murray is
rolling.
easily the
Atlanta
best.
Falcons defense has a way of jump-starting.
Opinions of players.
Let's see here. Next Sunday. No, it looks like the weather's going to be fine. 70 and 8-mile-an-hour winds. So
Okay.
I do like that.
Can we talk about the most egregious line of the weekend?
Well, I don't know. What's the next game that you wanted to talk about?
Let's talk about Miami versus Buffalo.
Okay. I have Buffalo favored by 11.
And I always seem a little shorter than you on these. I said 10.5. So you and I were on the same wavelength here. This has opened as 16.5 to Buffalo.
Yeah. I had a feeling when I wrote it down that I was going to be well short. I just can't. The 2-point play that the Dolphins ran was the tank summed up.
Yeah.
Right? It was most teams go for 2 here because they want to win. We're going for 2 here because we want to lose. Right?
I agree. That does appear to be the most parsimonious answer.
Do you have a problem with what the Dolphins are doing?
No, I don't, because my thing is no. There is a very well-defined path to success in the NFL, and it is not to sign Jameis Winston this offseason. It is not to sign Marcus Mariota this offseason.
Yeah.
It is not to sign Ryan Tannehill this offseason. It is to draft the best quarterback.
They already had Tannehill. So.
It is to sign the
Cleo Lemon's still out there.
Right. Quinn Gray.
Bring Adam
It's to draft the best quarterback available. And unfortunately, Rosen, there were some people who thought he was the best quarterback in the 2018 draft class. He certainly is not that player.
Well, but if you're tanking while finding out if he's good, like that,
that's great. And they're finding out the only.
So I disagree that you can find out whether a quarterback's good while simultaneously trying to tank. Right?
Well, sure. If Rosen's playing for a team. If Rosen's
on the Saints right now, he looks fine.
Well, but we've seen limitations to that as well. Goff is on the Rams, who have a great infrastructure, and he stinks.
They haven't learned the definition of a quick game yet.
Yeah.
So
right. Whereas the Dolphins are saying, look, man, we're giving you Gesicki, who's a previously high draft pick. We're giving you Devontae Parker, who is a high draft pick. We're giving you Kenyon Drake, who is a national championship running back. We're giving you at least some NFL players on your team. But the thing is, again, there's enough tape on Rosen from last year to say this is a very speculative bit, right? Sure. And they didn't start trading all their players. They didn't go into the season thinking they were good, but they didn't start trading all their players away until after they had training camp with Rosen. Yep. They literally didn't start him week 1. They saw those 2 quarterbacks and said Fitzpatrick's our guy. I don't have an issue with tanking. I think that, again, there's a well-defined path, and there was in the NBA, and that was why tanking, I thought, was fine in the NBA as well. In the NFL, it's about getting a franchise quarterback, and it's very difficult to do so, as the Cardinals found out when they drafted Rosen at 10.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to do so anywhere but number 1.
Do you think there's an there have been tank jobs that people have gotten mad about and that people haven't gotten mad about?
Yeah.
And it's the line between them is very interesting. Like the level of egregious disaster is different. And I wonder if there's a way to do it that doesn't make people super angry.
Well, I don't think the Dolphins have been uncompetitive. I think that they've been bad. Like, I don't think that they're not Mark Madsen shooting 7 threes in the 82nd Timberwolves game.
Right.
They're like today, Rosen was cheeks. They put in Fitzpatrick and they almost won. Like that's a compelling game.
You can't be using positive words in it with a negative connotation.
So like and against in week 1, yeah, they got boat raced, but it was also they didn't not try. They just got beat. In week 2, they held the Patriots to like 20 points offensively. They just had a couple pick sixes. Week 3, they were basically in the game the whole time against Dallas until the very end. Like they're not trying on the field. They're just bad.
Here's why I think people have such a hard time with it. And I think it's deeper than I'm a fan and I bought tickets to this and whatever. And like, okay, well, if you're a season ticket holder, you should be happy they're trying to get better. And if you happen to buy like random tickets to one game, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
That I don't think has anything to do with it. Here's what I think it is. There's no other situation in life that is like this. So you and I can't be like, oh yeah, I get it because I've done something similar before. Like, right? Like, none of us are like, hey, you know what? I'm going to suck at my job for a year so that, guess what? Next year, I get the number 1 pick of what job I want, and I can then do better. That doesn't happen, right? There's no, like...
Have you ever seen the movie Margin Call? That's exactly what Kevin Spacey told the traders to do.
Right. I mean, there's just...
It's a tough thing to relate to, right?
You know, it's like, oh, I'm going to be a shitty person to my significant other for a whole year so that I can buy all this, like...
But in reality, what it is, it's like, I'm a crappy player, and so I'm happen to be on this team that wants to be crappy on purpose-ish, right? It's sort of more of a, like, no one... It's sort of that thing where, like, 90% of people think they're above-average drivers, like... 80% of people think that they're above average at what they do. Right. Like the Dolphins are just like, we see the results every week, but I don't think there's a moral issue here. I think it's more that they just have bad players and they're getting the results of bad players playing football.
I would argue they have a moral, the moral, like what they have to do is try to win Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Right? Well, that's their obligation.
And their current approach, and this is why I come back to supporting tanking. The current approach for the Dolphins since Dan Marino retired in 1999 has been to let's be good enough to compete in the AFC East, and that has failed spectacularly. So at least trying to rebuild so whenever Brady retires in year 2027, they have a franchise quarterback and a team that they built their way with the coach that they have their way. We looked at the scheme clustering stuff, and their defense is exactly the same as the Patriots in terms of like the scheme. Like, I get all of it. And again, to your point, their goal is to win the Super Bowl, and all previous approaches towards that goal have failed spectacularly. This one is just another approach.
Yep, and it's the right approach. All right, we just talked for like 5 minutes on tanking, which I think was good. Great content. Let's go through these last 2 games. By the way, Buffalo at 16.5.
Dude,
there's the Dolphins.
Yes, come on. This is begging to be played. Fitzpatrick revenge game if he starts.
Look, I have felt great about the Dolphins getting over 2 touchdowns multiple times, and it has not worked.
Is Buffalo worse than the Chargers? Because the Chargers got 16 in Miami.
Yeah.
It's just it's weird because Buffalo has freaking Josh Allen. Josh Allen throws 1 pick 6 in this cover for the Bills is blown.
But you could also see Josh Allen rushing for like 200 yards in this game.
You can, for sure.
Jacksonville at Cincinnati. So we could go see Gardner Minshew.
We could go shake his hand.
Good Lord. I have the Bengals getting 4.5 at home.
I had them at 2.5, and it looks like we've split the difference. The Bengals
3.5.
3. It's actually 3 now. So
congrats.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I mean,
whatever.
It's
like
probably because the Jacksonville Jaguars could not score at home.
yeah, well,
that might be it.
yeah. I don't know. Here, there's really no reason to talk more about this game other than Gardner Minshew is better than Andy Dalton already.
Yep. Nope. That's it. Actually, there is a reason to talk about this game. Does Zach Taylor make it past a year?
Stop. Of course he does. Zach Taylor is in year 1 of 17 right now.
What are they doing over there?
They're like a less bad version of the Dolphins. They don't have talent. You're like, look, man, if you took my height and your build, we could play left tackle for the Bengals.
That's fair. It's a great point. Yeah, they did draft a tackle. It hasn't worked out. Okay, he makes it past a year. There you go. Chargers at Titans.
Ugh.
I have the Titans favored by 1.
Yeah, let me and it's just got taken off the board, but I
see a pick.
I saw it at Pick'em. I had Tennessee at +1.5.
Wow.
So I was looking forward to a Chargers win tonight, although Greenline ended up having Pittsburgh money line, which is
new.
Not it new. So this game sucks.
Yep. That is the Week 7 slate. Game you're most excited to bet on is what?
Teddy. +3.5 in Chicago.
Yeah, I like that one quite a bit. I also like Detroit as a pick'em against Minnesota.
Yep.
I like Philly. And here's the one that I think I like the most. Kansas City.
Yeah, I think that's a fairly solid collection. Hopefully, we have a decent number of edges in this week.
Ooh, edges.
And we
to
can
get
talk
me
about them
excited.
Thursday. But again, a lot of these numbers will change. Enjoy them now. Until then.
Oh, sayonara. Yeah, we'll see you guys later.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.